What in the world are you going to do with all of your stuff? If you are thinking about making a move overseas, that might be one of the questions keeping you awake at night. I've got this 4 bedroom house with an attic, a garage, and a basement, and it's all filled with a lifetime's worth of accumulation. How in the world do I downsize to make a move to a new country? Hi, I'm Kathleen,
I'm Lief Simon.
and we're going to answer that question right now based on more than 20 years of experience doing this over and over again for ourselves and helping others.
Right. And so my typical answer that I give when we talk about shipping at conferences is get a lighter fluid and a match. And that solves all of your problems. The men in the audience usually chuckle at that, the women cringe. And so if you're a couple looking to downsize and get rid of stuff before moving overseas, there might be some arguments coming. And
This can definitely be, we'll get to the practicalities involved and make some practical tips or offer some practical suggestions in a minute. But first, there's a big emotional aspect to this.
right,
And it can definitely lead to some lively debate between husband and wife or significant others if you're going to be making a move together. We know from a lot of, again, personal experience. We've shipped from the States to Ireland containers, from Ireland to Paris, from Paris to Panama, from Ireland to Panama, and from the United States to Panama. And every time we've made one of those decisions, made that decision to ship a container load of something from one country to another, I promised Lief that's the last time I'll ask to do that. And Lief has insisted this is the last time we will do this. And then we've done it again.
And we still do it. And at this point, we're not shipping big things. Over the summer, we shipped some books from the U.S. to Panama for the community center that we're starting out of Los Islotes. My mother, it was downsizing, so we were in the States helping her. And she is one of these people with a 4 bedroom house, basement and attic, garage, packed full of stuff, as so many American houses are packed full of stuff. And in theory, she's been downsizing, getting rid of stuff for more than the last 5 years in a preparation to move to a smaller place. When we got there this summer and saw how much stuff was still in the house, she'd gotten rid of a lot, but we got started really quickly. And the first thing you want to do, of course, is have a yard sale, which you can do in the U.S., Canada, I presume. Not so much in Ireland or France. They don't know what that is.
Well, in fact, our son tried to have a sidewalk sale here outside we're in this apartment in Paris where this happened when he was 4 or 5 years old. We had some things we didn't want, and Jack has always had an entrepreneurial inclination, and he said, can I sell those things? We said, sure. So he took them out onto the sidewalk in front of our apartment, and the French didn't know what to make of him. This isn't something that the French do.
No, but he did sell everything. Once they realized that it was actually for sale and it wasn't some crazy little kid on the street, he was able to get rid of everything, but it wasn't much stuff. In my mom's case, we had the biggest yard sale I think that town has seen ever. And we were restocking over the 2.5 days that we had the yard sale.
Right.
We had repeat customers for those 2.5 days.
Coming back and filling up pickup trucks
Right.
with stuff. That was a big first step.
Right.
Then there's another option which we found to be so easy and brilliant, I thought, which is donating. There were so many different options for places to donate any kind of thing you could have that might be useful to someone else. All you had to do was get it there.
Right. Or in the one group that my mom works with, they'll come and pick up. They come and buy and pick up once a month.
So we were, when we were really into this, making 2 and 3 and 4 trips a week with bins and boxes full of stuff to Goodwill and all other kinds of donation centers around Woodstock.
And all of that is deductible. Just make sure you get your receipts. And so you sell it through a yard sale, get rid of it one way or another to the donation centers, the Goodwill type places, or the next step is you can sell it online. So if you've got furniture or bigger pieces that aren't going to sell easily at a yard sale, but for the yard sale for the furniture, take pictures and create a little binder so people can look through it.
Like a little catalog.
Right. You don't want them going through your house, but that's one way to try and sell it at the yard sale. But otherwise, there are lots of apps if you want to deal with the apps and dealing with people writing to you asking questions. I didn't go into that genre. We ended up being able to get rid of most of the furniture that my mom was selling through the yard sale, or just in fact gave away a bunch of it.
But this is, I think, one of the most important points to make in the context of this kind of conversation, downsizing and dealing with a lifetime's worth of stuff. It's much easier to do this today than it has been in any previous time in history,
Right.
including when we made our first move to Ireland 22 years ago. I was pulling out the yellow pages to look up shippers and trying to figure out how to deal with my stuff. Well, today, as you know, whatever it is you want to do, you simply go to Google and type it in, and a whole bunch of resources will pop up to help you, including, for example, we needed to get some big, heavy stuff, some big pieces of furniture, for example, down from the attic, 3 flights, and up from the basement. And I went online and found a group called College Hunks Hauling Junk. And that's what
Right,
they did.
that's what it's called, right.
And we
There's
were
several of these types of
these
groups.
types of groups. And so we hired a couple of strong college guys to come and carry stuff down from the attic and up from the basement for us. We were able to rent a dumpster to have in the yard
Right, to just
for
throw
the stuff that just
couldn't be
really
sold.
couldn't be sold and wasn't worth keeping and had no real value or use to anyone else. That was, again, very efficient way to deal with that. So the point is that today, downsizing can be a much easier undertaking than you might imagine.
Right, and everything we've mentioned takes a lot of work and effort. We were, running the business and still dealing with this stuff, working 2 full days effectively. But you can outsource this to groups that do estate sales, so you can have them come in and just organize to run your yard sale or have the estate sale in your house. And we're talking about getting rid of stuff here. The one thing to probably try not to fall into is the idea of, okay, I'm going to store my stuff and then I'll ship it later or I'll deal with it later.
And we've done this, and there's a statistic that you told me at the time. On average, someone who rents a storage space, a short-term storage space, thinks they're renting for 3 months,
Right.
and they end up renting for 3 years and then getting rid of the stuff.
Right.
And that's almost exactly what happened to us.
And in Paris, we had to put some stuff into storage when we moved because we were going to be renting the apartment out, and our rental manager said to get rid of a lot of the small knick-knack stuff. So we put that and some personal things into storage and moved to Panama, thinking that, okay, we'll deal with it, get it out of storage, whatnot, fairly quickly. And that didn't happen. 3 years later, it was still in storage. So that was the shipment from Paris to Panama that we ended up
Ultimately made.
making. And a lot of the stuff that came to Panama, we ended up selling or getting rid of. So it wasn't worth the storage or the shipping in that case. And that's generally my big point with the lighter fluid and match being the extreme, is that if you sell everything, for the most part, I mean, you're going to want your clothes and your computer and whatnot that you can take with you on the airplane. But selling everything and saving the shipping cost, that money you can buy again, new, whatever, when you arrive.
And part of it is to, if you're able, and it is possible to do all of these things today online, research what is available at what cost in the place where you're going, so that you understand what is worth bringing and what is really not a good use of your resources and your budget to invest in shipping stuff to a country that you could replace with something better for much less cost. That, for example, was what happened to us with our first move. My initial shipment from Baltimore, I shipped a full container load of antique furniture that I had in my house in Baltimore when we moved to Ireland, only to find that I could have bought nicer quality antiques for a fraction the cost what I had spent for the antiques, or what I could have resold the antiques for in Baltimore before leaving, and saved the cost of shipping.
And the 1 year of storage.
And the 1 year of
because
storage.
we didn't have a place
Couldn't
to put
take
the
delivery
furniture.
right away.
Right.
And ended up with nicer stuff. So part of it is to understand, again, what's available where you're going, and to make those decisions before you invest in the shipping experience. And one question we get all the time is, okay, what does it cost to ship a container from one country to another? Of course, it depends on the country, the shipping company. You do want to shop this around. You want to get, I recommend 3 quotes from 3 different international shippers if you want to do this. And I also recommend that you take the soup to nuts service, that you have them pack, load, ship, deliver, and unpack, because they know how to pack glassware and china and artwork, and then buy the insurance.
Well, it's generally the only way that the insurance will take.
Right. We'll let you.
Yeah.
Let you buy the insurance. What is all that going to cost? A very big, round, rough figure because there are so many variables, is about $10,000. So this is not a small part of your budget.
The big cost of shipping is, in fact, the packing and the ground transportation to the port. Shipping a container from Miami to, say, Panama is, maybe $1,500 to $2,000, depending on the time of the year and whatnot. This is a 20-foot container. But everything else adds to that, including the customs fees, even if there's no customs duties because you have residency in the country you're moving to. There'll still be customs clearance fees and other things, plus whatever it's going to cost to get from the port to wherever you're living. So, right, if you figure it's going to cost you a minimum of $5,000, average of $10,000, and if you're going to do a 40-foot container, or if you're far from the port in the U.S., like if you're saying Minneapolis, for example, it may cost even more. So put all those numbers into a spreadsheet, and again, you figure that you can probably fill a house with furniture from that money in the new place.
All right, now let's return to the emotional aspect of this, because I don't want to dismiss that too quickly. We've tried to give you some practical tips, but the starting point is to begin now. I recommend that you start right now. This is a question we're getting all the time with everything going on in the world during this pandemic and all of the restrictions, and travel isn't possible in many cases. Borders are closed, and etc. What can I do? I don't want to put my dream on hold. What can I do? Well, this is one thing you can do.
Right.
Begin downsizing your home today. Start going around and thinking through, what do you want to take? What is important to you sentimentally? What has family legacy value? What would you be really sad not to have in your life? Your books, for example. For me, that would be the answer. And so we would always invest in shipping books with us wherever we go. For you, you'll know your own answer. And then once you identify what's important to you and what you want to bring with you, if at all possible, then start looking for what doesn't fall into that category, and you can filter out starting now through all the ways we've talked about, by donating, for example, which is a really easy way to get started at this.
Right.
So it's a very practical step that you can take starting right now to keep pushing ahead with your plan and your dream, even if you can't buy a ticket, hop on a plane, and show up where you might like to be. You can still be holding on to your dream and making progress. So I hope this has been helpful. We will be in touch again soon. Thank you for listening. As always, I'm Kathleen Petticord.
I'm Lief Simon.
Take care.
Bye, everyone.